it's difficult trying to pin down the writers who I think personally will have powerful voices, because it's too early to know. We've only been doing this kind of thing for 5 or 6 years in the whole history of science fiction. I mean, from the beginning, 1926, science fiction writers always dealt with you know, problems of ecology, and always dealt with problems of the culture, and always dealt with the effects of science on people, but not in this way, not with this kind of strength, not with this almost pamphleteering kind of messianic urge.
Is this what you try to do?
I'm doing it quite a lot. I'm dealing in, well, for instance, with the last 2 stories I've done have been about the white man's stealing the black man's heritage, his birthright, of turning him into kind of a mocha-colored white man. And I've done it in fantasy terms. Pennies Off a Dead Man's Eyes deals with a black girl who is passing for white, whose father, the black man, has died. And at the funeral, when the funeral is over, she removes the silver dollars from his eyes, thereby consigning him to hell. Or he can't get across the River Jordan. The dollars are to pay his way with the man. And a guy who was watching this, who was picked up by the father, and he calls himself a stray cat, goes after the girl to find out why she did it, and doesn't know that it's his daughter. And when he finds her, finds out that she's passing, finds out why she hates the father, because the father rejected her. Yet he, the guy, is an alien from another planet who washed up on our shores. And the black man took him in and helped him learn to pass. And I play the counterpoint of an alien passing as an Earthman against a black girl passing as a white girl. Is, I think, the strangest story I've ever written, because I've dealt with this theft of a black man's birthright in completely symbolic terms and in completely fantasy terms. What I'm trying to do in my work is to take the burning issues of our times, he said pompously, and entertainmentize them, make them interesting to read, yet by the same token, when you get done with them, your gut will somehow have been affected.
What place does Dangerous Visions have in this scheme of things?
I think the place it has in this current movement, or in this current flow of the field, is that it's a rallying point. It's a demonstration. It was the kind of book that they said could not be done, that no one would publish it, that if it was published, it would be ignored, and it wasn't. It was a book that received tremendous critical attention and seemed to be one of the first books in the vanguard of this new way of thinking. But I think Dangerous Visions solidified a lot of thinking for a lot of people, that they said, yes, we can go in other directions. No, we don't have to hold on to all the old formulas of science fiction. Yes, we can talk about sex. Yes, we can talk about religion. Yes, we can talk about labor relations and politics and coprophilia if we feel like it. So I think Dangerous Visions opened up doors that people didn't even know existed. And there are other people who have opened up doors similarly. Damon Knight with his Orbit series. Chip Delaney is now editing a magazine called Warp, paperback magazine, which will do more. There have been a few other anthologies and a few other, now some of the magazines are starting to do it, you see, because the magazines were the ones that held it back for so long, because they were the only markets. And as long as they were being sold on the newsstands, and as long as the mommies of the 14-year-old kids who read them were looking through them, they couldn't run anything very heavyweight. But now they have to compete. Now they have to keep up. And so they're starting to buy really topical and interesting and gut-wrenching stories.
Why did they think it couldn't be done?
Well, you see, what most people fail to realize about science fiction is that essentially it is a pulp medium. It started in the pulps, it's a commercial fiction, and all of the taboos that have hung on for 30 years, 40 years, with pulp magazines of all kinds, love story magazines, Western stories, detective stories, all of them were gathered into the science fiction field. These were all barriers that were imposed by the form, by the medium itself. I mean, a guy in a spaceship could take a 45-year journey from here to Proxima Centauri, and he never had to go to the bathroom once. And, you know, girls didn't have breasts in science fiction stories. God forbid, you know, if there was ever a relationship between a man and a woman, it was as as antiseptic as making love in an autoclave. And, you know, the stories of Doc Smith, the Lensman stories, are, you know, classics of that. And for what they are and what they do, they're great, because they have that great galloping sense of space and adventure and what Sam Moskowitz likes to call the sense of wonder in them. But God knows there isn't one human being from start to finish. I mean, they're all cardboard. And so that kind of restriction and taboo and order was built into stories all the way up into the 50s, when Tony Boucher and Mick McComas began Magazine of Fantasy and Science Fiction. They said, no more of that. Let's start dealing with people, and let's start dealing in literary terms. And let's stop thinking of it as a pulp medium. Let's start demanding of speculative fiction, science fiction, that which is demanded of all good fiction, that it meet the requirements of literature. And it's taken the writers 15, 17 years to finally get to the point where, yes, now that the difference between, I mean, if there is a new wave and an old wave, the difference between old wave writers and new wave writers is the new wave writers think of themselves as artists, and they are not ashamed of the big A, whereas the others thought of themselves as storytellers and, you know, amusing entertainers. And artists can be storytellers, too. The one does not negate the other.
What was different about Dangerous Visions?
Well, the stories were written especially for the book. And so by intent, the anthology tried to go some places that anthologies had not gone before. As much vehemence as is put into restrictions on writers, as much as they're told, don't curse, don't write about unnatural sex, don't offend the establishment, by most of the commercial media, that was the same vehemence with which I told the writers, get it on, you know, really do it. I really want you to write what you've never written before. I want you to just put your stomach on paper. And I was lucky. Out of the 32 writers in the book, maybe 10 knew what I was talking about, and 10 were free enough to actually open and do it. And so with that kind of freedom, and knowing they had that kind of freedom in front, they, I think, opened their heads more than they would for an ordinary story they were doing.
What role do you think, again, Dangerous Visions and Last Dangerous Visions will play in this?
Dangerous Visions was good because it was the icebreaker. Again, Dangerous Visions is going to put people away. It is going to twist their minds, because it takes up where the heaviest stories in Dangerous Visions left off. It goes about 50 miles further toward real, complete, total literary freedom in the speculative fiction vein than anything in Dangerous Visions did. And the most impressive writing is being done by not the established writers with great reputations, but the young Turks. I mean, guys you may never have even heard of. Ken McCullough and Jim Hemisath and Jim Sutherland and Ed Bryant and the women, their minds are incredible. You can't believe it. Ursula Le Guin and Josephine Saxton. Women like that are writing science fiction that's never been written before, because they're doing it with that special, strange, alien thinking that a woman has when she does it.